Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. We continue for today. And now we are going to discuss the situation related to disqualification and then reinstatement of Ukrainian Olga Kharlan. I think our audience is well aware of what happened at the World Fencing Championships. Our speakers Mykhaylo Ilyashev, President of the National Fencing Federation of Ukraine, and Oleg Shcherbakov, Editor-in-Chief of Tribuna.com. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. Mykhaylo, tell us, please, what is the situation right now? And as far as I understand, you have filed a complaint against disqualification, and what should be expected? We filed a protest with regard to disqualification, black card, and we are waiting for the result. Because first we asked if this can be like a delay of the decision, so we were refused, but something changed because this topic is now debated in the society, and the Bureau of International Fencing made a decision with regard to disqualification. So now everything is under consideration. There is no deadline, so we are just waiting. The decision could be made tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or perhaps we will wait even longer. Of course, we would like this topic to be settled as soon as possible. So if the decision will be made in favor of Olga, will she be able to participate in the championships? The championships are over now, so if the decision will be made in favor of Ukraine, namely in favor of Olga Kharlan, she will be able to participate in tournaments in the upcoming 60 days, but no tournaments are planned for that period. So the decision about disqualification will have a political nature because it cannot affect any sports events. Thank you. And now a question to Oleg. Could you tell us about the reasons of the situation and what has it shown to the sports community and to the whole world in general? Now, we cannot speak about the international resonance and what is related with Olga Kharlan and her disqualification. I see two issues here. The first one is that Olga Kharlan just participated in the World Fencing Championships. Before the start, the Ministry of Youth and Sport made amendments to its regulation about possibility to participate in the tournaments with Russians. Without those amendments, Olga would not be able to participate in the championships, as it was with the other fencer, Igor Reislin. This is a very important issue. And now we have a very powerful message with Olga Kharlan, but that amendment is very important for Ukrainian sport, because without amendments to that order, regulation, Olga would not be able to participate in that championships, and there would have been no situation with her Russian opponent. There would have been no resonance. There would have been no pressure on the International Fencing Association, the federation. And now we have the visually significant event. And for all media, for all PR experts, it is now clear that such action, such deed, has now a significant impact on the possible gradual return of Russians to the world sports. Without that event, this gradual return of Russians to this international sport would continue. But now we have the position of Olga Kharlan. We have now the discussion in this society. We have the response of the Ministry of Youth and Sports of Ukraine and the National Olympic Committee. Everyone was united, showing how we could put pressure on the International Fencing Federation with clear pro-Russian support. So this event was covered by mass media all over the world. Ukraine doesn't want Russians and Belarusians to participate in international tournaments, and now we have the reflection of this position in the mass media that was pressure put on the International Olympic Committee, and the German prominent outlets stated that it was in the error of Thomas Bach, which is the president of the International Olympic Committee, with regard to bringing Russians back to international competitions. So now we have the wider story than just a mere act of Olga Kharlan. And we have now a powerful public resonance. On the one hand, it is important for a domestic situation because we now have the amendment to boycott a regulation. We can participate in the competitions where Russians are involved. And now, during tournaments, we can show our protest against participation of Russians. Olga Kharlan showed her protest during the championships in Milan. On the other hand, now we have very powerful, strong resonance, not only in mass media and media of Ukraine, but all over the world. Thanks to Ukrainian fans, thanks to our Federation of Sports and the National Olympic Committee, as well as representatives of other bodies of Ukraine. The Office of Presidents was involved in supporting Olga Kharlan. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba, also supported Olga Kharlan, and the whole Ukrainian society showed its support to Olga Kharlan, showing to international sports community that is now willing to bring Russians back to Ukraine, saying that sports should be not involved with politics, that the sportsman has nothing to do with the war. But thanks to this news created by Olga Kharlan, that was possible thanks to amending the boycott regulation in Ukraine, demonstrated that we do not support the gradual return of Russians into international sport championships. And this is not only return of just Russian sportsmen, but these are Russian sportsmen that directly or indirectly support the Russian invasion of Ukraine or are related to Russian military. So to put it in a nutshell, it is a great case. It is bad that Olga could not just fight for the championship title, individual one. This is unfortunate, but Olga is strong, and I think that she understands that she has gained a lot that will have a positive impact in the future, because there are a lot of other different international federations, and there is the problem with the International Fencing Federation because it was once chaired by a Russian oligarch. But the same can be told about Chess Federation, Taekwondo Federation, Judo Federation, and we can see that there is gradual return of Russians now. And this is now a precedent, and this is a great story. Thank you for your analysis. We will come back to the general significance of these events. And now I have two questions to Mykhaylo as well as a journalist watching us online. What was the reaction of Olga's colleagues to her deed? And now it is said that because of the COVID limitations, there was the official pretext not to shake hands with the Russian. And a journalist watching us online says, should we wait for some changes in the regulation for the International Athletics Federation, for example, the exclusion of this requirement of handshaking for sportsmen and sportswomen? As for changing regulations, the International Fencing Federation said that it was going to consider the issue, but this is a long-term process because handshaking is a technical rule and not an ethical rule as in other sports. So it requires time now. And secondly, we can change the rules, but it will be for so-called neutral athletes to be able to participate in tournaments because it is not a problem for Ukrainians and talents, for example, to shake hands. So actually, and even where there was no handshaking, there were no issues. Yes, there were COVID limitations for several years. And the handshake was substituted with the saber touch of saber blades, but and actually before the day that was cancelled, we did not receive official information about this, and even in the morning, nothing was said on the official side of the website of the federation. We were informed about this after that. And of course, you cannot cancel such rules. So on the third, fourth day of the World Championships, it should be made. It should be done on the eve of the championships. And perhaps that was made for Olga, for Dmitro Reislin. And actually, they knew that Dmitro was not going to participate in the tournament, but then they saw the amendments to the boycott regulation in Ukraine, and they understood that Olga would participate. She informed the president about this, the president of the federation, and they decided to cancel that rule, the substitution of tapping blades, and we will submit our claim to the International Olympic Committee because we believe that that was quite, so to say, an unethical decision because it was not announced publicly. And the first question about the support to Olga from Federation. Did you expect that she would react as she reacted? When we learned that the Ministry of Youth and Sports gave a permission for the Ukrainian athletes to participate in the championships, that was the meeting of the Federation of Ukraine to consider the issue. So we confirmed the possibility of participation, and we also weren't about showing any kind of solidarity with Russian athletes. And Olga is the member of the presidium of the federation, and she was aware about the decision. We expected from her that she would not shake hands with the Russian athletes. I anticipated that there could be a black card, but my colleagues were rather optimistic, and they believed that there would be no black card, because even during that tournament, in around there are 5% of cases when athletes did not shake hands. And over the last years, and actually it became quite common for the athletes to offer their sabers to tap blades, for example. That was the case with the Danish athlete, and so there was no resonance. And when I told this to the head of the technical directorate that the black card should not be issued, he told me that there were no complaints, so that's why they did not react to that cases. But I understand the real reason of their decision, and this is their huge error, because without the black card, that case would not be noticed on the international level. As for this international resonance, Oleg, the question is to you. So you believe that this case will stop the gradual return of Russian athletes to international tournaments. What tournaments do you mean? So what are you expecting in the nearest future? I would like to clarify a bit your phrase. It does not stop the gradual return of Russians, but it gives us an opportunity to make a restart. To hinder this gradual return of Russian athletes, because without our joint efforts, without the joint efforts of the Ministry, of the National Olympic Committee, and the sport community, the Russians will be gradually returned. And but we cannot expect that it will be stopped, because some other sports now have Russians returned. But from the 1st January next year, and we do not see now Russian athletes, but there are some plans to have them back. So the winter season will start, and a lot of winter sports federations, they postponed the decision because they should not make a decision because it's summer now. That's why they postponed their decisions. And now I think that we should expect a return of Russians for winter games, winter sports. The situation is rather difficult. As for the international resonance and the possibility for us to change the situation, I think that we've lost the last 3 or 4 months with regard to putting pressure on Russian sports and athletes, because when Russians were returned, we just boycotted there. We did not participate in judo, taekwondo tournaments, and no one covered the topic. But let's imagine that Daria Bilodeid had participated in the Judo World Championships, and theoretically she had to face a Russian, and she could have shown her protest as well. And perhaps this media turmoil, like storm, started 2 months ago. But we've just wasted this time, as I believe. And I think that that boycott regulation was inefficient. Of course, we can argue this. There can be different points of view. I believe that that was not effective because it created no resonance both in Ukraine and outside. Because the decision of possible return of Russians is made by international federations and international Olympic committees. So we should put pressure on them in different languages, English, French, etc., and through BBC, CNN, and not through Ukrainian media outlets. But this is a different topic. As for the future, there will be wrestling championships, and Russians are returned there as well. And it would be great to have some plan from that federation, from the athletes who will be involved in this tournament. What was the situation with Olga Kharlan? 3 weeks before the World Championships, our outlet Tribuna made an interview with Olga Kharlan. because we anticipated such story with Olga Kharlan. That's why we interviewed Olga Kharlan, and back then we just made our forecast that boycott regulation could prevent Olga from participating in the World Championships. So we're starting raising the issue for the public to remember such athlete as Olga Kharlan and such sport as fencing, because generally people are interested in sports, in sport only during Olympic Games. But it is important for us to remember a bit about this now, and we need to support our top athletes. And now we are waiting from the Ministry of Sport, from the Federation, some clear plan, asking the society in Ukraine to support us, them in putting pressure on different federations. But I think that the work of the ministry is rather slow now. Perhaps they write some letters, but I think that now everyone understands that to have some result fighting Russians in sports, we should take legal actions, proper legal actions. And I think that in the case with Fencing Federation, they take proper legal actions because Mykhaylo is a tourist in his background. But this is only 50% of the success story, because other 50% should be covered by the public, by the society in Ukraine, because there were thousands of messages from Ukrainians, shame on you, Russian money lovers, and that's how joint efforts allowed us to get decisions in our favor. And Thomas Bach got the message because Vadim Gudzait sent a letter to Thomas Bach. And on the other, and I believe that Thomas Bach could not but see that heated debates around return of Russians. To avoid such situations in the future, we need some plan from the Ministry of Sport, from the National Olympic Committee, and they can address our outlet, Tribuna, or some other media, asking us to support them in the awareness-raising campaign. Because the Ukrainian media outlets, of course, try to put pressure on the international community, on federations, but we cannot just monitor all sports, because of course we monitor the situation with boxing, football, etc., and just physically it is impossible to cover all these hundreds of other sports. That's why it is the role of federations is very important. They should tell to the society, saying that the president of the federation is Russian, a lot of Russian chess players there, but they are just reluctant to do anything, because I'm really afraid to visit their website, because this is outdated. And now I would like to ask representative of the federation, Mykhaylo, are you still with us? Yes. Could you make your comment, and then there will be a last question to you. First of all, about the role of the federation. Of course, there are a lot of questions to federations of different sports, but people who are not related to the topic have poor understanding of the federation, because people, for example, are well aware of the football federation that get high salaries, they have fancy offices. But there are no significant results at the international arena. As for federations of Olympic sports, they usually have several people, their staff, getting some salary, and others, they're just volunteers. And as a lawyer myself, I can organize some activities, and now we have court proceedings with the International Fencing Federation. But this is unreal for other federation to address some tribunals or Swiss courts because they don't have enough money for this. And I think that the Ministry of Justice should support federations in fighting for their rights in the legal domain. Unfortunately, they do not support them now. As for that boycott, it's like with the individual protest, because at first everyone just pays attention to you. For example, when you announce starvation. And first, we were supported with our boycott. Some countries supported us, but not the leading fencing countries. And we expected that federations from the United States, France, supported us. And the whole construction of Le Shcherbakov and his proxies would be endangered, but we did not succeed there. And now we have this situation. The boycott was rather successful at the initial stage. It had some sense because we hoped that other countries would support us, and we understand that the International Fencing Federation made a decision about allowing Russians to participate before the decision of the International Olympic Committee. And how the involvement of Russian athletes was reacted because the International Fencing Federation just destroyed his construction because he said that Ukrainians made a step forward, that they agreed to participate. And the International Olympic Committee perceived our decision as this step forward, that we agreed to participate in international tournament, but the International Fencing Federation barred the whole construction. And now it will be very difficult to explain that the sports is just a step forward to the peace. And what is also very important is that journalists should work hard for the international resonance, because it seems to us that everyone supports us. But I talked to a taxi driver in Milan, and he told me, why did Olga Kharlan did what she did? Because it's just sports. She had just to shake hands with the Russian. And just then I explained him the situation for 5 minutes, and he agreed with me after that 5 minutes, saying that yes, Olga was right. So we need to work with people. We need to explain them the real situation. And of course, there should be a general message, but we need to provide the full information to people for them to understand us. Thank you very much, Mykhaylo, Oleg. I would like to thank you for your time. We should stop here. Thank you very much for being with us today, and I would like to wish you success in sport. Thank you. Thank you too. And we will have a separate meeting with Tribuna on Tuesday. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day, and we will gladly invite you to Media Center Ukraine Odesa with some positive news. Our next briefing will be in 25 minutes, and it will be dedicated to possible hostilities in the water area of the Black Sea, and we will have the military experts with us. Stay tuned.